Hey everyone, and welcome back. We all love a good story about powerful women in history. Figures like Joan of Arc or Cleopatra. Their names just bring to mind strength and defiance. But today we're diving into a story you might not be as familiar with. A story that's every bit as epic and inspiring. Get ready to travel back to first century Vietnam as we uncover the legend of the Trung sisters. Ah, the Trung sisters. Their story really captures the spirit of resistance against impossible odds. Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're going to the Noble Blood podcast and their episode, The Legend of the Trung Sisters, for some incredible historical insights. Now picture this. It's the first century AD. Vietnam is under the control of the Han Chinese Empire. Enter our heroines, the Trung sisters, Chum Trog and Chung Nuc. They were born into an aristocratic family, and they may have even been trained in martial arts from a very young age, which, as you can imagine, becomes pretty important later on.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about their background is the possible societal structure of the Lalingep people, the group the sisters belonged to. There's evidence suggesting they might have lived in a matrilineal society, a world where lineage and power were passed down through the mother's line.
Oh, wow. That's a stark contrast to the Han Dynasty, which was very patriarchal. I can already see how this clash of cultures might have fueled the sisters' rebellion.
It's definitely a key factor to consider. Imagine growing up in a society where women hold positions of authority, they control property, and their lineage is celebrated. This would have stood in such stark opposition to the Han Dynasty's rigid patriarchy, and it really could have shaped the sisters' understanding of leadership and their willingness to challenge the existing power structure.
Absolutely. It adds another layer of complexity to their story. Before we get to the rebellion itself, there's a crucial element we need to explore. A love story. Because what's a good historical drama without a little romance? Chung Trak, the elder sister, marries the son of a neighboring lord, a man who dared to rebel against a notoriously cruel Chinese governor.
And this is where the historical accounts get really interesting. The fate of Chung Trak's husband. It's depicted very differently depending on whether you're looking at Vietnamese or Chinese sources. Vietnamese accounts emphasize his heroic defiance, claiming he was executed for his rebellion, leaving Chung Trak a widow seeking vengeance. But Chinese sources suggest a different narrative. They imply that he actually survived and joined his wife's fight.
Wow.
These contrasting portrayals highlight the complexities of interpreting historical events. And it really reminds us that who's telling the story often shapes the narrative itself.
It makes you wonder how many other historical events we think we understand are colored by the perspectives of those who documented them. But regardless of her husband's ultimate fate, one thing is clear. The sisters didn't just mourn, they mobilized. They rallied an army, an astounding force of 80,000 strong, with a significant number of women among their ranks, and prepared for a truly epic confrontation.
And get this, they rode into battle atop war elephants.
And I'm trying to picture that scene. An army of 80,000, many of them women, charging on elephants. It must have been an incredible sight. It wasn't just a display of military might. It was a symbolic gesture, challenging traditional notions of warfare and showcasing the strength and determination of the Vietnamese people, especially their women.
Absolutely. Sources suggest that within this army, there were as many as 32 female generals, out of a total of 69. That level of female participation in a military leadership role is practically unheard of for the first century AD. It speaks volumes about the unique societal structure of the time and the vital role women played in this rebellion.
Wow. And they didn't just fight. They won. They actually drove out the Han forces and established their own rule for 2 years. It must have been an incredible moment for the Vietnamese people, a moment of liberation after years of oppressive rule. They even went so far as to abolish those unpopular Chinese taxes, a move that undoubtedly made them instant heroes to their people.
While their victory was short-lived, their impact was undeniable. They became symbols of resistance, courage, and the pursuit of freedom. But sadly, as is often the case with history, the records are frustratingly sparse when it comes to the specifics of their reign. We know about the tax abolishment, but what other policies did they enact? What were their goals for their newly liberated nation? It makes you wonder what other stories, what other details haven't survived the test of time.
It's always fascinating to think about those missing pieces, those untold stories that could completely reshape our understanding of history. But even with those gaps, the impact of the Trung sisters is undeniable. Their story didn't end with their 2-year reign, in fact. It was just the beginning of a legacy that would continue to evolve and inspire for centuries to come.
You're absolutely right. The Trung sister story didn't fade into obscurity. It transformed into something much more enduring, a symbol, a rallying cry that would be invoked time and again throughout Vietnamese history.
So how did this transformation happen? When did their story start to shift from a historical event to a powerful symbol?
Well, as you might expect, the first written account of their rebellion came from a Chinese historian, and it wasn't exactly a glowing tribute to their cause. It was more of a footnote, a brief mention of this uprising that had challenged the Han Empire's authority. But it wasn't until the 13th century that the Trung sisters were officially incorporated into Vietnamese history by the historian Le Van Hu.
That must have been a significant moment, their official recognition as Vietnamese heroes.
Absolutely. It was a crucial step in solidifying their legacy. Le Van Hu included them in the official dynastic histories, essentially legitimizing their role as early rulers of Vietnam. And it wasn't long before local temples began to spring up in their honor, a testament to their growing spiritual significance within Vietnamese culture.
It's amazing how they went from rebellious figures to revered icons in just a few centuries.
And their mythical status only continued to grow. In the 14th century, a new story emerged about the emperor having a vivid dream, where the Trung sisters appeared as these radiant, powerful figures, riding on steel horses and pulling rain in their wake.
So they went from warrior queens to rain-bringing deities. That's quite a transformation.
It certainly adds a whole new dimension to their image. They became almost divine figures, capable of answering the prayers of the people and bringing relief from drought. It's a beautiful blend of their warrior strength and a more nurturing, almost maternal aspect.
This duality of strength and grace seems to be a recurring theme in their story. It's what makes them such compelling and adaptable figures.
Precisely. And as we move into the early 20th century, we see how this adaptability allowed their story to be embraced by various movements, sometimes with fascinating and even conflicting interpretations. For instance, the Trung sisters became prominent figures in anti-French plays during this period, used as symbols of resistance against colonial rule.
That seems like a pretty straightforward use of their story.
Right. Rebellious Vietnamese icons used to inspire a new generation to fight against another oppressor. But you mentioned there were some unexpected twists in these interpretations.
Oh, absolutely. There's this one play written by an anti-imperialist activist that actually tries to downplay Chung Troc's authority as a leader. The playwright introduces a fictional nephew character who takes over the leadership role for a while because Chung Troc doubts her ability to lead as a mere woman.
That's a surprising twist. You'd think a play promoting resistance against the French would wholeheartedly embrace a strong female leader like Chung Troc. It's almost like they were trying to use the story to inspire resistance, but also reinforce traditional gender roles at the same time. It's a fascinating example of how a historical narrative can be adapted and manipulated to fit various agendas, even those that might seem contradictory. But it's important to note that this wasn't the only interpretation circulating at the time. While that play was promoting a more conservative view of leadership, other feminist texts from the same era were using the Trung sisters' story in a much more empowering way.
So how did they manage to do that, especially considering the French censorship that was in place at the time?
They got creative. There's this insightful article published in Women's News, a liberal periodical, that cleverly focuses on the sisters' deep love for their people and Chun Troc's unwavering determination after her husband's death. They highlight the contributions of the women generals and the immense respect the people held for their queen. By emphasizing these aspects, they were able to convey a powerful message of female leadership and national pride while still navigating the constraints of censorship.
It's like they were sending a coded message, using the language of feminism to promote a broader message of resistance against colonial rule.
Exactly. And as we move into the mid-20th century, with Vietnam divided into North and South, guess who emerges as a powerful rallying symbol for both sides?
Well, given their adaptability, I'd say it's the Trung sisters again.
Right.
It's as though their story becomes a blank canvas onto which each side can project their own ideology.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
In South Vietnam, we see Madame Nhu, this influential and controversial figure, drawing parallels between herself and the Trung sisters, invoking their warrior spirit to justify her own, often contentious, political actions. There were even parades where women rode on elephants in their honor, a powerful visual link to the past.
And what about North Vietnam? How did they use the Trung sister story?
Interestingly, they emphasized the collective struggle, highlighting the role of the sisters' mother as a key figure in the rebellion. There's a compelling article from People's News that focuses on her leadership and the widespread participation of comrades from across the land. The article even portrays Chung Troc's husband's death as a consequence of collaborating with the enemy, a clear message aimed at solidifying loyalty to the communist cause.
So even the husband's role. which was already subject to conflicting interpretations, gets further reshaped depending on the political message being conveyed. It really shows how every detail of their story can be imbued with new meaning and significance.
And that's precisely what makes the Trung sisters' story so enduring and fascinating. It's not just a fixed historical event, it's a living narrative, a powerful symbol that can be adapted, reinterpreted, and used to inspire and mobilize people across generations and ideologies.
It's like their story serves as a mirror, reflecting the hopes, anxieties, aspirations of each generation that embraces it.
Exactly. And this evolution of their story leads to a fascinating question. How does this malleable nature compare to the legacies of other legendary figures worldwide? Does this lack of concrete historical detail actually make their legacy stronger? Because it can be adapted to fit different needs and contexts.
It's a thought-provoking question. But before we get too caught up in these broader historical comparisons, I'm really curious to hear more about this modern-day opera, about the Trung sisters that you mentioned earlier. It really is remarkable how their story continues to find new life and relevance even today. You mentioned an opera called Ting Chung Mi Lin.
Sure.
How can you tell us about it?
Yes, Ting Chang Mi Lin has captivated audiences for decades. It's a testament to the enduring power of their story. There was even a recent production at a prominent theater in Ho Chi Minh City, with the goal of bringing this piece of history to younger generations.
It's wonderful to see their story being kept alive in such a vibrant way. And this opera you mentioned, is it a traditional Western-style opera or something different?
It's actually a uniquely Vietnamese art form called Kai Lung, which beautifully blends operatic vocals with spoken drama. Imagine a performance where powerful singing intertwines with dramatic storytelling. It's incredibly engaging and emotionally resonant. Ting Chang Mei Lin is considered a classic within the Kai Lung tradition, with many renowned performers taking on the roles of the sisters over the years.
So it's more than just a historical retelling. It's a living, breathing art form that continues to evolve and resonate with audiences.
Exactly. One of the most powerful scenes in the opera is a farewell song that Chung Truck sings to her husband before his execution. It's a heart-wrenching moment where she grapples with personal loss. While remaining steadfast in her commitment to her country and the fight for freedom, the music and the raw emotion of that scene are truly unforgettable.
Wow, it sounds incredibly moving. The fact that the Trung sisters story can be adapted to so many different forms, from plays to operas, and still have such a profound impact, speaks volumes about the power of their legacy.
It's a testament to their strength, their courage, and their unwavering dedication to their people. They became more than just historical figures. They transformed into symbols of resistance, hope, and the pursuit of freedom, inspiring generations to fight for what they believe in.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the legend of the Trung sisters, what's the key takeaway for someone who's just now learning about them? What makes their story so compelling, so relevant, even after all these centuries?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the Trung sisters are more than just figures from a history book. Their story has become a powerful and enduring symbol, one that has been woven into the fabric of Vietnamese culture and identity. They represent resistance against oppression, the pursuit of freedom, and the strength and resilience of the Vietnamese people, especially the often overlooked contributions of women.
It's as though their story is a reflection of the Vietnamese spirit itself, constantly evolving and adapting, yet always rooted in a deep sense of pride, resilience, and the pursuit of a better future.
Precisely. And what's truly remarkable is how their story has been embraced and reinterpreted across different eras and ideologies, from anti-colonial movements to feminist writings to communist propaganda and modern-day operas. The Trung sisters have served as a source of inspiration and a rallying point for diverse groups with sometimes conflicting goals.
So what does that tell us about the power of stories and their ability to transcend time and circumstance?
It highlights the dynamic relationship between history and memory. The way we remember and reinterpret the past is constantly being shaped by our present needs and aspirations. In a way, the Trung sisters' legacy is a testament to the enduring power of hope and the human capacity for reinvention.
Their story is a reminder that history is not just a collection of dry facts and dates. It's a living, breathing narrative that continues to shape our understanding of who we are and what we're capable of achieving. And for our listeners who want to delve deeper into the visual representations of the Trung sisters throughout history, I highly recommend a quick Google image search. You'll find everything from ancient statues to modern-day paintings, each offering a unique perspective on their enduring legacy.
It's a fascinating visual journey that showcases how their image has evolved over time, reflecting the changing perceptions and interpretations of their story. It's a reminder that even in the face of oppression and adversity, the human spirit can find ways to resist, to inspire, and to leave an indelible mark on history.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.